Hello and welcome to another computer literacy tutorial. Today's tutorial is focusing on Google Sheets, which is the Google Office equivalent of Microsoft Excel. It doesn't have anywhere near the functionality as Microsoft Excel, but it does plenty for our needs. All right, let's get started.
Okay, so we want to start off by creating the file and the location where we want to save it. So once again, to do that, we need to go to our waffle, go to our Google Drive, then let's go to the classroom folder. And let's find our particular class. In this case, find your complet folder. In this case, it's orange. Yours might be a different color. And then we're going to go to projects, and then we're going to go to Google Office projects, and then Sheets. And this is where we're going to create this file. So we're going to go up to New, Google Sheets. Don't worry about this message, you won't see this. And we've created a new Google Sheet.
Now, if you're unfamiliar with spreadsheets, let me just take a moment to explain what you're seeing. Now, this is a spreadsheet program. It's pretty good for organizing information. You can program formulas and get it to do certain things for you. And you can format it too to make it more viewable. Now, the way that it's organized is basically through columns that are designated by letters. So columns go across the top, starting with A, going on, keeps going. And it could technically go well past Z, at least in the Excel version it does. You start to get into double letters like AA, AB, all that. And in addition to the columns going up and down, we have rows, which are horizontal, and those are designated by numbers. And those go down for quite a ways. Notice that this goes down to 1,000, and it gives you the option to add 1,000 more if you need to. But I do believe that if you have a spreadsheet that needs more than 1,000 entries, then you're probably going to need a database instead. Offers more functionality. In any case, that's how it's organized. Columns and rows. And each one of these little boxes, called cells, has an address that is arrived at by combining its column, in this case A, and its row, in this case 1. So this cell right here would be cell A1, A2, A3, and so on. And I just click one randomly. This would be cell G15. That's how that's organized. All right. Before we go any further, it's always a good idea to begin with the end in mind. So I'm going to show you a graphic of the file that we're going to be creating. This is a spreadsheet, and I've formatted it with some colors, with some information, and a graphic, several graphics, and even a hyperlink. And you can't see it at the moment, but I have also plugged in a formula that does some addition for us, and I'll be going over how to do that and explaining when we get to that. All right. So let's go ahead and hide this, and let's name our spreadsheet. Let's name it Travelog. Now, this isn't an empty exercise. We are going to be using this sheet, this Travelog, for a project coming up. So, all right. The first thing we're going to do after naming our file is we're going to select the rows that we're going to be working with. We're going to be working with rows 1 through 13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right on the 1, and notice that selected the entire row, and I'm going to drag it down all the way to 13. And notice that it selected every single cell in those rows. Now, we're not going to be going all the way to Z, but I just found it easier to do it this way. It just will select it all at once. Otherwise, I'd have to specifically tell it how far we're going. This is just easier. All right. Now that I've selected the rows that I'm going to be working with, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to tell the program that I want to resize rows 1 through 13. So I'm going to click on that, and it's asking me, all right, what do you want to resize it to? As you can see, the default is 21. I want to resize the height to 90. And there we go. Cells rows 1 through 13 have been resized to 90. Notice Every place else that I didn't select stayed the same. Now I want to do a little other formatting since I have everything selected. This is a great way to make wholesale changes. Otherwise, when you change something on your document, you have to do it cell by cell, each individual cell. But when you select everything at once, like I've done here, whatever changes that you make in format, it does it to what's selected. So that's a nice way of doing a lot of things at once. So the first thing I want to change, I'm going to go to Format, and I want to go to Text Wrapping. Now, if you don't know what text wrapping is, it's just a feature that allows text to sort of wrap around to the next line. If I put text, let me go ahead and click on that. If I put text in this box and the text, the sentence I put in is longer than the width of this box, it'll just show up on the next line. It does that automatically if you put in text wrap, and that's a nice feature to have. I also like to change the alignment. So let me go to Format, Align. Now, as you see, the default alignment for left, center, right is left, and so the horizontal positioning, the default alignment is left, and for the vertical positioning, where it sits in the cell, is bottom. I like to change them both to the center, so everything goes right in the middle. So center. Let's go back. Format, Align, and middle. That way, everything I put in the cell and any of these cells that I've selected will show up horizontally in the middle and vertically in the middle. So it's smack dab in the middle of the cell. I like the way that looks. So next, now that we've formatted our cells, we're going to go ahead and enter in the data. Now, there is a separate file on the Complit drive provided for you called Travelog Data, and it is basically a graphic of this screenshot right here, and it just shows you what you're going to put in and where. So, for instance, row 1, A1, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put Expedia website. Row 2, you're going to write all this and so on. And then when you get to row 3 and you get all the way over to here, you're going to put in this information. I'm going to show you a little tip for putting this in. And then just a little sort of labor-saving tip. All right, so this will be the text we're putting in. I'm going to go ahead and do that, stop the video, and then I'll come back when I'm done, show you that little tip, and then we'll keep moving. Okay, and we're back. I've got all my text entered, as you can see. Yours should look like this when you're done, or mostly done. As you can see, I've only put in one instance of this message right here, but we're going to show it all the way down. So here's a little trick. Essentially, if you bring your cursor to the bottom right-hand corner of a cell, you are able to drag it and essentially copy what's in there to multiple cells. And I'm going to do this all the way down to 11. That should save you a little bit of labor. Also, you can manually change the width of a column or even the height of a cell. Let me show you how. I think that the N column is a little too narrow for this message. It looks a little funny. So what I want to do is I want to create a little bit more real estate. So I'm going to bring my pointer, which is a single white arrow, up in between the two row headers, right to the line in between, column headers in between N and O. Those are the column heads. So, and then when I get the double white arrow, I'm going to drag and drop the cell over so that it makes the entire column wider. And you can do the same thing with any row if you wanted to make it taller as well. Okay. So next, let me come back over. What I want to do next is I want to merge these cells. Cells A1 through N1. Instead of having all these different cells, I want it just to be one cell. And I want my text to be right in the center so that it is looks like a nice title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all the cells that I want to merge. So I'm coming over here and I'm going to start with N. I'm going to click in it and I'm going to drag over all the way to A. And next I'm going to come up to Format. I'm going to go down to merge cells. I'm going to tell it to merge all. So merge all of these cells. Now there's some other options, but in this instance, I'm going to tell it to merge them all. And notice it did it. So now I've got my title centered perfectly in the middle of the page. Next, a little more formatting. I want my all the text in row 2 that I put in. These are my the sort of the headers of my travelogue. I want them to stand out. So I'm going to make them bold. Next, I'm going to do a little bit more formatting. I'm going to use the fill color to shade in certain rows so that they're a little bit more visible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the row. So I started over at row at column L, and I came all the way over to column A, and I'm going to come up to the bucket and I'm going to select gray, which is right above cyan. And I want to do this every other row so that in the end I have all the rows, every other row down to the bottom of the page, so that ends up being rows 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 all gray. So let me do that. And the last one, row 11, gray. There we go. And the purpose of that is that once you've got information in there, it just makes it a lot more visible. Easier to find the information if you have references, such as colors. Okay, next. As mentioned earlier, I'm going to be putting in some formulas here. I'm going to be dealing with some numbers, and this sheet is going to help us keep track of certain amounts. And to further make those particular columns more identifiable, I'm going to give them colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight. I'll start with total flight cost, which happens to be cell E2. I'll click on that. I'm going to highlight down to row 12, and then I'm going to use my fill color again, and I'm going to choose cyan for this first column that I'm going to highlight. And I'm going to do the same for all the columns that have a cost associated with it. So the next one, total car cost, I will click on that, drag it down, and this one is going to be yellow. Then total hotel cost, drag that down, and this is going to be green. Total food costs, highlight all of the cells that I'm using down to row 12. I'm going to make this orange, and then which I can, since I'm down here already, I can start highlighting from here, come up, and I'm going to make this a light yellow, beigey sort of color. And then the last row, overall trip costs, I'm going to go ahead and make that magenta. Alright, so now we've got our colors in. Next, I'm going to put in borders, lines in between that'll help us see the information better. To do this, I'm going to come down to the cell N12. So that's column N, row 12. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to drag it over all the way to A, and then I'm going to come up all the way. And what this does is it selects all of these cells so that I can affect change to them. And the change I want to affect is to add a border. So I'm going to click on borders and tell it to add all borders. And so as you can see, every place that I selected now has a border. And this is how it should look. Now, I also want to put a special border around my total cost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight just the cells for total cost, so, and the cell for total cost and the one right next to it, because this is where the figure is actually going to go. So that ends up being, I'm going to highlight cell K and L 13. So click in it, come over, and now just those two cells are highlighted. I'm going to come back up to borders, and in this time I'm going to tell it to put an outer border on it, because I want these to be separate cells, but I want them to look like they're the same cell. So outer border, and notice it put a line around these two cells. And to make them stand out further, I will give them a color. So once again, highlight them, come over to fill color, and I will give it a dark gray, which is right above yellow. And I think I'll also make this bold, so that it'll really stand out when the results come back. Okay, so far so good. Next, I want to create a hyperlink. A hyperlink is a bit of text or a graphic that you can click on, and it takes you to someplace else. It can take you to someplace else in the same document, or it can take you to another website. In this case, we're going to have it take us to a website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up, and I'm going to highlight Expedia website, and I'm going to go up to the Insert Hyperlink button on my toolbar, Insert Link. And what I'm going to do, and notice that I didn't even have to type anything in, because this is a Google program. It's integrated with Google Search, and what it's doing is it's pointing me right towards the Expedia website. So all I need to do is click on it, click apply, and the link is created. And that's pretty neat. That's pretty easy to do. Now later on, when you want to visit that link, if you click on it, it shows you the address. Click on the address, and it takes you to the website. And this is where later on we'll be making our arrangements for this particular project. So that's how you make a hyperlink. And here's the code for it right up here. All this is happening behind the scenes. All we need to do is click. Okay, so next, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be plugging in a formula to get this sheet to do a little addition for us, so that we can keep track of how much we're spending at each place and our overall costs. Now the way this is set up is that each line represents one leg of the trip. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the sheet add up each column on a particular row, and put the answer in over here on the right. So essentially what's going to happen is the program will add up the numbers that we put in E3, G3, I3, J3, K3, and put the sum right here, put the answer right there. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing all the way down. So I'm going to click on the cell where I want the sum to be. I'm going to come up to this button up here where it says functions. I'm going to click on the arrow. I'm going to tell it to add up the sum, and I'm going to click on the cells that I want it to add. So for instance, I want it to click on E3, G3, I3, J3, K3, and notice that it added all these, or it put all these in the formula. So this cell is going to give me the sum of this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell, and so on. And when I'm done, I hit enter, and that it puts a 0 there. Okay. Now notice what happens if I plug in a number up here, like 13. It plugs in 13 because it's 13 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. But watch, if I put in a 2, it will, and I click away from it, it'll do the addition and put the sum right here. And it'll keep doing that. Well, not in this one actually, because I didn't put a formula there. Again, I put them I put colors on the cells that are going to have formulas, and it just keeps adding them up, so you can keep track of how much you've spent on these things: total flights, total cars, total hotel, all this stuff that will make more sense later when we get to that project. But for now, we're just putting in this formula. All right, so let me go ahead and get rid of the information in there. Now, if a word to the wise, if you click on this cell and hit delete like I just did, you'll get rid of the formula. So be careful about that. Be careful about deleting from the overall trip cost column. Okay? Now, you may remember when I showed you the little shortcut where I copied this text. Well, here's another really cool feature. I can do the same thing and it'll copy this formula. So if I drag this down, now look, instead of it being, so here's the original formula that I put in, which is sum E, G, I, J, K3. So it's basically all these. Now watch, it'll be the exact same thing, but instead of it being E, or instead of it being 3, it'll be on row 4. So instead of that, it'll say E4, G4, I4, and so on. So watch. It just basically does the same exact formula, but on the next row. So I can do this all the way down. And I've done it all the way down to here. And so notice that it changes what's in the formula depending on what row I'm at. So that's pretty cool. That saves us a lot of work. We only really have to do this once and then just drag it down. Okay? All right. Now, in addition to that, we're going to get our sheet to tell us how much we spent overall. And it's the same exact thing, except I'm going to tell it to put the sum right here, and it's going to add up these totals. So the way that we do that is we click in where we want the answer to be. I'm going to click in sum, and then I'm just going to select all of these. All right, so as I click on this, I'm noticing something. I'm noticing that I have 2 L11s and I'm missing L5. So what I can do is that you can actually edit this text. So what I'll do is I'll get rid of that and I'll just put a 5 right there so it covers everything. So it should be going, we started on 3, so L3 through L12. So do we have L3, L4, L5, L6, L7, L8, L9, L10, L11, L12. So it's got them all. So I click away from there, and notice there's a 0 right there. So once again, if I put a number in here like a 10, it's gonna add it up this way. So let me put a 5 in here. So this says 15 because it added this up, it added this up, it added this up, and this, but there's a 0, so it's just 15. But watch this. Down at the bottom, the 15's there. Well, why is the 15 there? Because it's adding up this column too. So watch, if I put in a 5 here and a 10 here, let me do something different. I'll put in 20 here. It added them up, correct? This way. But watch, now it's going to add the 25 to the 15 and give me the answer right down here. So it keeps track of what we're spending as we go along. So pretty cool. Let me get rid of these values. Everything will be back to 0. And we can go on to the last thing that we're going to do, which is to put a graphic in. All right, if you remember from the very beginning where I told you we were beginning with the end in mind, I showed you a graphic of the overall sheet. Notice I have these stop signs in here. That's because I'm really trying to emphasize the importance of completing each section of the trip before you move on. That'll come into play later. All you need to worry about right now is getting this stop sign into this particular cell.
Okay, now to add our image, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the menu on top, click on Insert. Then we're going to go down and look for Image. And we're going to select Insert Image in Cell. And we've got some options as to where we can get images from. I'm going to find this one on Google Images. I'm going to click that. And I'm going to type in my search term, stop sign. And I will select this first one that I see. Click insert. And you can see it's been inserted where we want it to be.
Now, to just fill this in all the way down, I do the same little trick. Just drag it down. And there we have it. We've got this file completely set up for us to use in our Wonders of the World Trip project.